World War I had a variety of impacts on the U.S. Economically, there were 5 major effects. First, this was the first time the U.S. Became a creditor nation. It increased trade. It increased productivity. The U.S. got very little back of the money that they lent because those countries that they lent money to had just come out of a war that they couldn't fund on their own. They didn't have money to give back. And number 5, we reverted back to laissez-faire economics. It was the return to normalcy, as coined by President Hardy, who came after Wilson. He created the word normalcy. Before then, it was not a word. This plan was less favorable to workers. Politically, there were 2 major effects. First was the era of isolation, which was caused by the return to normalcy. We didn't want to have any involvement with European affairs. People didn't see the point of the U.S. Being involved in World War I because we got nothing except lost lives. Secondly, the U.S. didn't sign the Treaty of Versailles. We didn't want to join the League of Nations, although Wilson did, and he literally worked himself to death trying to convince the U.S. population that it was a good thing, but he failed. Wilson was very partisan and didn't want to work with the Republicans, so that didn't really help his case. Socially, there were 3 major effects. First, there was racial tension. In the North, there was the Great Migration, so now blacks were competing with veterans for jobs, homes, and neighborhoods. In the South, 400,000 black veterans now knew how to use weapons, and they had military training, and they were accepted back in Europe, whereas they weren't accepted here, so they were not expecting to be accepted, but it's something they'd gotten used to, so they thought they deserved it now more than they did before. So that caused tension. In 1919 alone, there were 70 lynchings of black war veterans, and some of them were hung in uniform. In the summer of 1919, 25 northern cities had race riots. Secondly, there was labor unrest. There were no strikes during World War I, whether that be because of patriotism or because we're at war, suck it up, don't cause problems. But, as the great old quote is, serenity now, insanity later. In 1919, more than 4 million, which is 20% of the workforce, of workers went on strike at some point, which was a record. That's 3,600 strikes. Lastly, there was the Red Scare. I'm going to mispronounce this word, and I'm sorry, but there was vigilante justice, which is where citizens without legal authority punished other citizens. They were that afraid of communism. The Attorney General, A. Mitchell Palmer, who is the head of the Department of Justice, wanted to be president, and he sincerely believed that communism was a security issue. On May 1st of 1919, a series of mail bombs were discovered in the U.S. mail, targeted for homes of prominent capitalist figures. No one was injured, but the fear of communism rose. So, by November, the Palmer raids began. 12 cities were searched for communists, and 250 citizens were arrested. In January of 1920, the Palmer raids continued. 33 cities were searched, and 4,000 people were arrested. On May 1st, Palmer claimed there'd be an attack, but there wasn't an attack of communism and communists. But since there wasn't, his career fizzled. The raids increased the fear rather than reassuring the citizens that, hey, the government's taking care of it, and fear paralyzes people. So the violation of individual rights wasn't really worried about, because the U.S. citizens didn't care. It was a matter of security, and when it's a matter of security, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Once someone was labeled a communist, they were a communist, and it was assumed that they were bad and evil. It didn't matter if they actually were. World War I confirmed our dominance in this hemisphere.